Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here, John Sneisen. And what does government do best? Well, they steal people's money, they push it into inefficient things, they push people into debt, they kill people, and a couple of these examples are right here in this article I'm about to read out of Philadelphia, as the Zero Hedge article says. Philadelphia plunders its property owners for cash. And as it goes on to say, like a lot of major cities in the United States, Philadelphia is in pretty rough financial condition. One of the city's biggest problems is its woefully underfunded public pension, which has a multi-billion-dollar funding gap. In 2001, Philadelphia's pension fund was still in decent shape with a funding level of 77%, meaning that it had sufficient assets to meet 77% of its long-term obligations. By 2017, the funding level had dropped to less than 50%. Part of this is just blatant mismanagement. While most of the market soared in 2016, for example, Philadelphia's pension fund lost about $150 million on its investments, roughly 3.17% of its capital. It's interesting that along the way, the city has actually tried to fix the problem. Between 2001 and 2017, the amount of money that the city contributed to the pension fund actually increased by 230%. Yet despite increasing contributions to the fund's solvency level keeps shrinking. Mayor Jim Kenney summed up the grim situation in his budget address last year, and I quote, "The city's annual pension contribution has grown by 230% since fiscal year 2001. These increasing pension costs have caused us to cut important public services while the pension fund's health has grown weaker. In fact, our pension fund has actually dropped from 77% funded to less than 50% funded during the same time our contributions were so rapidly increasing." So desperate for revenue, the local government has been relying on an old tactic to get their hands on every spare penny they can. The city of Philadelphia owns the local gas company Philadelphia Gas Works, PGW. It's essentially a local government monopoly. And over the last few years, PGW developed an automated system to comb its billing records, find delinquent accounts, and file a lien on those properties. If you're not familiar with real estate law, a lien is a formally registered security interest in which your property serves as a collateral for a debt. When you borrow money from the bank to buy a home, for example, the bank registers a lien over your home for the value of the mortgage. The lien prevents you from selling the home until you satisfy the debt. It also means that if you don't pay the debt, the lien holder, the bank or the gas company, can seize the property. In PGW's case, the gas company is filing liens over people's properties due to unpaid gas bills for as little as $300. There is essentially zero due process here. It's not like the gas company has to go in front of a jury and prove that there's an unsatisfied debt. They just have their automated system file some papers and poof, the lien is registered. So someone could have their home encumbered for a $300 late bill that ended up being an administrative error. More importantly, it's curious why the gas company is filing a lien against the property, because it's entirely possible that the delinquent customer isn't even the property owner. Let's say you're a landlord and renting out your investment property to a tenant, and the tenant doesn't pay his gas bill. PGW will put a lien on your property even though it's not your bill. Even worse, you wouldn't even know about it because PGW would be sending the late notices to the tenant, not you. At that point, it turns into a total bureaucratic nightmare. If you're lucky enough to even find out about it, you call PGW to try and get the lien removed. But according to court documents, PGW tells angry landlords that they have no control over the lien process and tell people to file a complaint with the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. Yeah, that'll get them far. But then the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission tells you that they have no jurisdiction over liens in Philadelphia and that you should talk to the utility company. Classic government bureaucracy. You just get bounced around between various departments and nothing ever gets resolved from a problem that you didn't even create. Well, a bunch of landlords finally had enough of this nonsense, so they got together and sued the city in federal court. It seems like a slam dunk case. Why should property owners be held liable for the actions of their tenants? If tenants don't pay for their own gas, the tenants should be held responsible, not the property owners. Common sense, right? Wrong. The landlords lost the case. 2 weeks ago, the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania ruled that the city of Philadelphia was well within its rights to hold property owners responsible and to file a lien on the property without even notifying the owner to begin with. This is a pretty strong reminder of how low governments will sink when they become financially desperate. And I think it's pretty clear that they're dependent on the dependence of the populace, so they focus on sucking people dry as much as they can, suck all the blood out of them, and cause all sorts of problems, be inefficient, and steal people's money and push them into debt servitude. If they shove you down a bottomless pit of debt, you are forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, which puts you in perfect servitude right where they want you. John, what do you think about this whole issue?
Well, I think it's criminal activities, of course. I remember I was just watching as I drove here your Linda Albrecht interview, and you were talking about how, what if somebody sold drugs out of your house that you were the landlord of?
An apartment building.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. So they're actually doing the same thing that they did to Russ here, to these poor landlords that are actually owning the property. They have no clue, that their customers are not willing to pay their bills, which is a whole different story. And of course, it's another story on top of that. The private utility company that the government owns. It's a monopoly. It's the government basically that runs it. It's the same as Manitoba Hydro here. What a joke Manitoba Hydro is, in my point of view. It's just insane of what they're doing here. And a lien is actually like if you try to go to court with it, it's a valid thing. And liens are getting traded all around all around North America. Actually, I worked. I've been at a couple of workshops where you have been, where there's tax lawyers and other people that are talking about tax liens, for example, which is liens either on unpaid taxes, or it could be a property tax lien where you haven't paid your property tax, but you can buy these. The government sells them off so they can make extra money, Josh, and then they give them to, people that would, go and say, like, hey, give me that debt that you now owe me, not, the government anymore. So it's just a huge scheme that they put together. And as you see here, how insane it could be. It could even be an error. And, you're just running circles with the government. And that's what's happening all the time. We all have dealt with this.
Well, John, I thought that the government cared for people and wanted to bring people out of poverty. Wait, that's not the government. That's the free market. Oh, man. John, where do you think this will lead in Philadelphia? Because obviously this is insane. People are going to be having to deal with this for a long time going forward. Is this going to, what's going to happen with this?
Well, I don't think anything is going to change, to be honest with you. Government is government. It's just going to increase its power and its blood-sucking abilities. It's just going to become bigger and bigger, like a tick. A tick sucks you dry until it basically is so much blood that it's basically dead and just falls off of you.
Well, I have to mention that at the beginning of this article, it talks about how there's a multi-billion-dollar funding gap in people's pensions. And I mean, one of the things that we need to make absolutely clear, in our opinion, is that individuals should save for themselves and not depend on the Ponzi scheme that we call the pension plans. Because if you look over time, as a recent study came out and showed, by 2050 we're looking at a $400 trillion pension shortfall worldwide, and that's huge. That's over 4 times the world GDP in a year. So just think about how insane that is, and then just consider 2050, it's going to be way overboard before then. It already is. It's insane how big the shortfalls are even today, and in the United States, in Canada, in everywhere you look, it's just massive pension shortfalls because people are trusting the government and the banking system to take care of them. They're forced into this in most cases. Their money's taken out, put into these plans, and then they expect to see this money. And some people do. Most people my age won't be seeing that, and the shortfall is so insane that people will end up with nothing. And they work their whole life and get nothing because why? They didn't save for themselves. They think that the government and the banking system will save for them and everything's going to be just dandy, which is never the case. Never depend on the government and the banking system. They depend on your dependents and they want you in debt servitude, as I mentioned earlier. So when people are dependent on this, they aren't educating themselves on the financial side of the situation. People aren't being independent, self-sufficient, and understanding the monetary system, understanding the markets, and then saving their money, protecting their wealth, protecting their purchasing power away from the fiat system, which is inevitably going to collapse. It always has, always will, going back to 1024 AD in China. People need to understand this, educate themselves, and do whatever they can to protect their wealth, because in the end, this whole system is going to come down, and if you aren't ready, then, well, you're in a lot of trouble, because then you are going to be on your knees begging the government for help, begging the banking system for help, and that's right where they want you, and that makes you basically a slave to that system. So please, folks, don't be in servitude to the debt masters surrounding us. Make sure that you understand these things. Look at gold, silver, other ways, cryptocurrencies that have sound fundamental value. Look at ways to protect your wealth and do your own due diligence, and don't submit to this massive complex of organized crime that we call government and banks.
Yeah, well, just look at how they managed to lose money over the last, 8 years after the crisis. That just baffles me. Well, actually doesn't, because most, of the fund managers that are running these pension funds, these different government entities that are supposed to, make sure that the money, keeps on coming in, they're mostly, the bottom of the barrel. They are not, the bright minds that are, on Wall Street or everywhere else where they actually are able to make money. And who can't make money over the last 10 years of massive, money printing into oblivion? You could have just put a little bit of money into real estate and stocks and you'd be pretty good.
Massive bubbles being propped up.
Yeah, they managed to lose money in this period. It just baffles me, and it's just insane. But of course, it doesn't again, surprise us at all.
Yeah, it's a government. What do you expect?
Yeah,
they're great. I give government a lot of crap a lot of the time, but I mean, they are incredibly brilliant at losing money, incredibly brilliant at stealing money, and incredibly brilliant at killing people. Though I wouldn't exactly say that's worthy of being it's not worthy of bragging about, because obviously it's terrible. That means the only things that they're efficient in are the worst possible things you can find throughout humanity, and how humanity extorts and enslaves other individuals through these massive complexes and cartels.
Yeah, of course. No, it's just insane where we're heading with this. And of course, there's no difference where you are. Josh was talking about the $400 trillion shortfall. That's all over the world. All these funds around the world, and even the corporate funds that are out there, everybody is losing money because they promised way too much of what they're going to uphold. And of course, now with the demographics, rapidly declining from the people that are, in the old days, in the 30s, you had, 10 workers per retiree. Well, now you have 1-to-1 basically. So there's nobody to really fund the people that are, getting out and actually want to use this money.
Well, and then meanwhile, you have massive regulations, massive taxation, and then you have a lot of predictions, trend setting, where they're looking at people born in 2007 living as old on average as 107 years old. Which, imagine going from 55 to 107 or something like that, and getting a pension. That's a regular, kind of a low wage, but a regular wage, and that's gonna. I mean, how is that going to be met? That's impossible. It will be insane.
Half your life on government pension.
Yeah. I know. Everyone get on welfare. Everyone.
Sorry for laughing, but that's kind of insane to think about. No, you need to take advantage, take rule of your own life and put your own money into your own investments and raise your financial IQ, because these bozos that are sitting there, running the show has probably 10 or 15 in financial IQ. They have no clue what they're doing. And of course, the government goes in that same category, spending and abusing money all around the world, destroying, livelihoods for people just by, doing different things to try to manipulate the system, give you the runaround. That's what government has come down to. They used to be maybe tiny little bit okay at doing things, but now they just ended up they just ended up being full on bureaucracies that are just running around to just suck out whatever money they can out of every single resident that they live in their jurisdictions.
Yeah, sure. And I've considered, you mentioned IQ, John, and I'm just thinking we have maybe financial IQ, but I think most of the lackeys have about room temperature IQ. That's Celsius, by the way, room temperature in Celsius. But then, the guys at the top, they are incredibly brilliant. They are geniuses. but in all the wrong ways. So, I mean, that allows them to be able to take advantage of people. They're brilliant at extorting and stealing from people. They're brilliant at pushing people into debt servitude, and they're brilliant at making sure that your life is a living hell and you are working for them rather than for yourself as an individual outside of this collectivist coercion.
Yeah, and their neighbors far up north, well, not far up north, just up the street basically from Philadelphia and New York and Manhattan. Of course, the banksters have been known to create a whole bunch of derivatives and assets to just suck money out of these pension funds as well, because that's what they do. They just take advantage of them and pocket their own money, from these idiots that are running these. So it's just clear that it's a huge Ponzi scheme that's going on, and people are gonna have to see, maybe only like from 20 to maybe 5 cents on the dollar, that they actually will get from those funds. And at that time, who knows, we might have a hyperinflation. So you're completely screwed in both ways here, unless you actually take action and protect yourself.
Yeah, so people of Philadelphia, people of the world, rule yourself, decentralize everything, look at ways of being self-sustainable, food, water, shelter, self-defense, so you're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block. Check out that 3D printed gun stuff that's going on in the US right now. That's pretty exciting. But that's First Amendment and Second Amendment issue. Imagine that. But rule yourselves, decentralize everything, and of course look at things that have protected purchasing power for millennia, gold and silver in our opinion. It's not investment advice because it's wealth insurance, not an investment. Also, looking at things like cryptocurrencies, as I mentioned, the ones that have sound fundamental values, a lot of them don't, so you have to do your own due diligence and make sure that you are making the right moves, because there's a lot of scams out there, and it comes down to you being financially educated, financially responsible, because responsibility is a hallmark of freedom itself after all. Bottom line, John?
Yeah, some cryptocurrencies is better fundamentals than all these pension funds that's out there. That's all I have to say about that.
Even some of the scam ICOs.
Oh, 100%. No, it's just insane. Like, take care of your own life and make sure that you actually get your financial IQ up to a point where you could do your own and create your own money, create a business.
Your own central bank.
Yeah, be your own central bank. Print your own money, as Robert Kiyosaki says. That's how if you write a book or if you create something of value, you kind of printing your own money, because you're giving value to the populace and they give you money back. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just comes down to you being responsible, folks. And you being educated allows you to protect your family as well and spread that information elsewhere. And it grows, it grows like a forest almost, compared to this cancer that constantly grows called government and banks. So, I mean, it's a good thing to grow outward and stem outward from and break free from this cancerous system of government and banks and central banks. So it's so important.
The mushroom on the trees is the government.
Yeah, anyway, so thanks. And we should eat them too. Thanks for going into this with us, John. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth.
Be the change.
Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized by YouTube as they bring in the ADL to flag all of our content as hate speech. Also check our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check us out at Steemit at Josh Sigurdson, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency, Steem that is. So don't forget to check us out there and find us at Anarchapulco 2019. I know it's early, but this is such an exciting event coming up with Ron Paul, Judge Napolitano, David Icke, Larkin Rose, Jeff Berwick, all the usual characters, and it's going to be amazing. So we hope to see you there. Make sure to check the link for Anarchapulco below and use promo code WHAM to save as much as 15% on your tickets. We hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.